Do you remember the daring heroes, the clashing swords, the unforgettable charm of the Three Musketeers, 1973? The film swept us away on a vibrant adventure with D'Artagnan and his legendary companions, but behind those flawless duels were real lives far darker than the story on screen. Some rose to glory, some lost everything, and others met endings no one could have imagined. Join us as we uncover their names and honor the legacies they left behind. Michael York as D'Artagnan. Michael York was born on March 27, 1942, in Fulmer, Buckinghamshire. At 31 years old, York played D'Artagnan, the idealistic, agile young swordsman whose loyalty drives the entire story, in The Three Musketeers, 1973. The role transformed him into a global star almost overnight. But the path ahead tested his body and his endurance in ways he never expected. His marriage to photographer Patricia McCallum in 1968 became the quiet force behind his international career. As York filmed Logan's Run, 1976, toured stage productions, and appeared in epics like Murder on the Orient Express, 1974, the constant travel left the couple relying on letters, late-night phone calls, and brief reunions squeezed between shoots. Their choice not to have children remained a mutual decision shaped partly by the demands of his schedule and partly by health uncertainties that began emerging in his 40s. Those health battles intensified after the 1983 car accident that injured his throat, leaving subtle but lasting effects on his voice. 3 decades later, amyloidosis, a rare blood disorder first mistaken for bone cancer, pushed him into bone marrow stem cell treatment. Even while his vision blurred and his energy collapsed unexpectedly, York continued acting and voice acting, appearing in Austin Powers, Justice League Unlimited, and The Simpsons, determined not to let illness define the narrative of his career. As of 2025, York is 83 and living in Minnesota to remain close to Mayo Clinic for ongoing treatment. He still accepts narration and voice work, his distinctive tone carrying the same clarity that marked his early Shakespeare roles. His estimated net worth of $10 million reflects more than 6 decades of film, theater, television, and voice artistry. Oliver Reed as Athos. Oliver Reed was born on February 13, 1938, in Wimbledon, London. At 35 years old, Reed played Athos, the haunted, noble musketeer carrying the weight of old wounds, in The Three Musketeers, 1973. His performance fused raw strength with bruised melancholy, a reflection of the man he was off-screen. Behind the charisma, chaos followed him like a shadow. His marriages unfolded against the backdrop of his turbulent drinking. Kate Byrne endured the early years, watching Women in Love, 1969, turn Reed into a force of British cinema even as alcohol pushed him into bar fights and late-night disappearances. With Josephine Burge, stability seemed possible, but long absences during filming and tabloid scandals made their private life a battleground. Alcohol took its toll, deepening old injuries. The exhaustion showed. During a break from filming, after drinking heavily with sailors, his heart finally failed. The tragedy was sharpened by the irony that he had promised director Ridley Scott he wouldn't drink during production. Reed died on May 2, 1999, at age 61 from a sudden heart attack in Malta. He was buried in Bruhenny Graveyard in the Irish village. His estimated net worth of $10 million came from a career of unforgettable performances, each one stamped with brilliance and self-destruction in equal measure. Frank Finlay as Porthos and O'Reilly. Frank Finlay was born on August 6, 1926, in Farnworth, Lancashire. At 47 years old, Finlay played Porthos, the boisterous, larger-than-life musketeer whose humor masked surprising depth, in The Three Musketeers, 1973. The role allowed him to stretch beyond the supporting parts he had long been confined to. Yet behind the laughter of Porthos was a man who carried decades of bruises, both literal and emotional. His marriage to Doreen Shepherd in 1954 became the anchor that steadied him through years of professional doubt. While Finlay was earning an Oscar nomination for Othello, 1965, and delivering a chilling portrayal of Hitler in The Death of Adolf Hitler, 1973, he was also spending long stretches away from home, sometimes missing key family moments as he moved between stage and television sets. Still, their union endured quietly and faithfully for more than 50 years, even as fame arrived later than he had hoped. Illness began to shadow him after a serious on-stage accident early in his career left lingering physical pain that returned with age. The emotional toll worsened after Doreen's death in 2005, a loss so deep that his colleagues noticed his work in series like Life Begins and Prime Suspect carried a heaviness not seen before. Even as he accepted roles across television, film, and radio dramas, the man once known for his sharp, commanding performances seemed increasingly fragile. Finlay died on January 30th, 2016, at 89, from heart failure at his home in Surrey. His legacy, shaped by Olivier's National Theatre, BAFTA-winning performances, and decades of classical mastery, remains one of the richest of his generation. His estimated net worth of $5 million reflected a lifetime of steady, disciplined work across stage and screen, built without shortcuts and carried by sheer resilience. Richard Chamberlain as Aramis. Richard Chamberlain was born on March 31, 1934, in Beverly Hills, California. At 39 years old, Chamberlain played Aramis, the poised, enigmatic musketeer whose charm masked inner conflict, in The Three Musketeers, 1973. The role arrived during a golden period in his career, but also during a time when his private life demanded silence. His relationship with Martin Rabbit began during an era when Chamberlain was constantly traveling for miniseries like Centennial, 1978 to 1979, and Shogun, 1980. Months of filming in remote locations strained their connection, and Chamberlain's status forced them to shield their relationship even from colleagues. When The Thornbirds aired in 1983 and drew almost 100 million viewers, the sudden surge of attention made privacy nearly impossible and deepened the emotional distance between them. Illness entered quietly when he was diagnosed with prostate cancer in 2003, forcing him to undergo treatment between theater performances and guest roles in series like Brothers and Sisters. Though he recovered, follow-up procedures over the years restricted his ability to work, and recurring heart issues later pushed him into long periods of rest. Even so, he continued to appear in productions such as the revival of My Fair Lady, determined not to let aging erase him from an industry he helped reshape. Chamberlain died of complications from a stroke on March 29, 2025, in Waimanalo, Hawaii, just 2 days before his 91st birthday. His estimated net worth of $25 million reflected a career spanning over 60 years, from Dr. Kildare, which made him a household name, to The Bourne Identity, 1988, where he became the first man to play Jason Bourne. He was laid to rest in Hawaii, the home where he finally allowed himself to live authentically, far from the pressures that once defined his stardom. Jos Ackland as D'Artagnan's father. Jos Ackland was born on February 29, 1928, in London, England. At 45 years old, Ackland played D'Artagnan's father, the stern, protective figure who anchors the young hero in The Three Musketeers, 1973. The role arrived during a period when his private world was shifting dramatically through hardships. Stepping into that character felt strangely familiar in his own life. His marriage to actress Rosemary Kirkcaldy had already survived trials that would have crushed most couples. After the 1963 house fire left her unable to walk for months. He balanced hospital visits with rehearsals, often performing at the Old Vic while carrying the fear of losing her. When he later joined productions like Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, 1979, the constant travel forced them into long separations that tested their emotional endurance even further. As his roles grew larger, White Mischief in 1987, and Lethal Weapon 2 in 1989, success collided with tragedy when their eldest son died, a loss that overshadowed every award nomination that followed. Rosemary's motor neurone disease then transformed their home into a place of quiet suffering, and Ackland often returned from major sets like The Hunt for Red October, 1990, only to spend nights adjusting medical equipment rather than celebrating career milestones. The contrast between his rising fame and collapsing family life became one of the deepest contradictions of his later years. Ackland died on November 19, 2023, at 95, passing peacefully in his home in Clovelly. His estimated net worth of $15 million reflected more than 130 roles across film, stage, and television, with advertising work such as the W.K. Kellogg campaigns supplementing his income. He was buried beside Rosemary, closing a 51-year partnership that shaped every triumph and every wound of his long life. Faye Dunaway as Milady. Faye Dunaway was born on January 14, 1941, in Bascom, Florida. At 32 years old, Dunaway played Milady de Winter, the seductive, treacherous force at the heart of The Three Musketeers, 1973. It was a role that matched her intensity and the electric sharpness she brought to every frame. Her ascent in Hollywood looked unstoppable, but her personal life was already beginning to fracture beneath the weight of fame. Her first marriage to rock singer Peter Wolf collapsed under the strain of her non-stop schedule, especially during periods when films like Chinatown, 1974, and 3 Days of the Condor, 1975, demanded emotional immersion and long on-location shoots. By the time she married photographer Terry O'Neill in 1983, Dunaway was caught between her desire for stability and the chaos of a career shaped by directors like Roman Polanski and Sidney Lumet. Her battles with depression and later diagnosed bipolar disorder added another quiet layer of struggle, one she kept hidden for decades while performing in demanding roles like Mommy Dearest, 1981, a film that consumed her so deeply she often stayed in character off-set. Episodes of exhaustion, erratic mood swings, and prolonged isolation followed her through the late 1990s and early 2000s, even as she continued appearing in independent films and occasional prestige projects. As of 2025, Dunaway is 84 years old, living a quieter life while still accepting select roles when health and energy allow. Despite professional controversies and personal upheavals, her estimated net worth of $50 million reflects a career marked by Oscar wins, Golden Globes, and performances that shaped entire eras of American cinema. Christopher Lee as Rochefort. Christopher Lee was born on May 27, 1922, in London, England. At 51 years old, Lee played Rochefort, the cold, razor-sharp enforcer of Cardinal Richelieu, in The Three Musketeers, 1973. It was a role that leaned naturally into his towering presence and the quiet menace he had perfected over the years. Even then, his life off-screen already carried shadows heavier than any villain he portrayed. His marriage to Danish model Birgit Krønke, beginning in 1961, endured the pressures of a career that constantly moved across countries and continents. When Lee spent years trapped in the Dracula cycle, filming up to 2 Hammer movies a year, the grind left him exhausted while Birgit held their home together almost single-handedly. Yet their union remained intact, even as he shifted into new worlds, Bond in The Man with the Golden Gun, 1974. Then The Haunting Horror of the Wicker Man, released that same year. Health issues began to surface in the 1980s after years of smoking and lingering injuries from World War II service, including respiratory problems he rarely spoke about publicly. Despite this, he took on some of the most demanding roles of his later life, from Saruman in The Lord of the Rings to Count Dooku in Star Wars, often filming for months at a time even as age weakened him. Through it all, Birgit remained by his side. Lee died on June 7, 2015, at 93, after heart failure and respiratory complications, passing away quietly in a London hospital. He had completed more than 200 films, worked with everyone from Tim Burton to Peter Jackson, and was knighted in 2009 for his contribution to drama and charity. His estimated net worth of $25 million reflected a lifetime of unbroken work, spanning horror, Bond, Middle-earth, Galaxies Far Away, and even symphonic metal albums he recorded at an age when most actors have long retired. Charlton Heston as Cardinal Richelieu. Charlton Heston was born on October 4, 1923, in Evanston, Illinois. At 50 years old, Heston played Cardinal Richelieu, the calculating, steel-willed political mastermind, in The Three Musketeers, 1973. The role fit him perfectly, a commanding presence shaping events from the shadows. Yet away from the set, the world around him was beginning to turn harsher and more divided. His marriage to Lydia Clark, beginning in 1944, endured every storm that Hollywood and politics brought their way. While Heston was filming epics like Ben-Hur, 1959, and El Cid, 1961, long absences and the strain of constant travel left Lydia to hold the family together with little help. Still, their 64-year union survived the pressures of fame, activism, and scandal, even as his outspoken NRA leadership in the late 1990s dragged the family into public controversy they never asked for. Illness crept in quietly. After battling prostate cancer in the late 1990s, the Alzheimer's diagnosis in 2002 changed everything. Heston, once the face of American heroism, began withdrawing from the public eye, missing events, forgetting names, and slowly losing the clarity that had once defined him. During those years, Lydia cared for him with unwavering loyalty, watching the man who had carried entire films grow smaller, quieter, and more distant. Heston died on April 5, 2008, at age 84, at his home in Beverly Hills with his wife by his side. His ashes were returned to his family after a memorial attended by some of Hollywood's most influential figures. His estimated net worth of $40 million reflected a lifetime of monumental performances, decades of activism, and a legacy that continues to divide and inspire audiences in equal measure. Geraldine Chaplin as Queen Anna Geraldine Chaplin was born on July 31, 1944, in Santa Monica, California. At 29 years old, Chaplin played Queen Anna, the elegant, wounded monarch caught between duty and danger, in The Three Musketeers, 1973. For her, the film marked another attempt to step out from beneath the immense shadow of her father, Charlie Chaplin. But escaping that legacy would prove far more difficult than any role she accepted. Her long relationship with Spanish director Carlos Saura, beginning in 1967, brought both artistic triumph and personal heartbreak. While starring in Ana y los Lobos, 1973, and Cría Cuervos, 1976, Geraldine found herself torn between the demands of a creative partnership and the emotional collapse of a romance that consumed more than a decade. Their separation in 1979 left her raising their son Shane while navigating a European film industry that often treated her as Chaplin's daughter, rather than a leading actress in her own right. By the 1990s, age and exhaustion were beginning to show. Performing in films like Chaplin, 1992, and En la Ciudad sin Límites, 2002, she carried the weight of her family's history while managing emerging health concerns she never fully disclosed. Her marriage to Chilean cinematographer Patricio Castilla in 2006 finally brought stability after years of complicated relationships, and together they raised their daughter Una, now an actress herself, continuing the Chaplin artistic line. As of 2025, Chaplin is 81 years old, still performing occasionally while dividing her time between Miami, Madrid, and Switzerland. Her estimated net worth of $20 million comes from a lifetime of international filmmaking and the enduring Chaplin legacy. Raquel Welch as Constance Bonacieux. Raquel Welch was born on September 5, 1940, in Chicago, Illinois. At 33 years old, Welch played Constance Bonacieux, the luminous, tragic confidant whose innocence turns the plot. in The Three Musketeers, 1973. Her performance shattered expectations, earning her a Golden Globe and proving she was more than the poster girl the studio system tried to make her. But the woman behind the icon was living a far more fragile story. Her marriages unraveled one after another under the weight of fame. James Welch watched their young family strain as her beauty contest success pushed her towards stardom. Patrick Curtis tried to control her image so aggressively that the line between husband and manager dissolved into resentment. Andre Weinfeld brought a decade of relative calm, but career pressures and emotional distance ultimately fractured their home too. Richard Palmer was the last to attempt a life beside her, yet even that union collapsed under the glare of constant publicity and the lingering shadows of infidelity whispered about for decades. Illness arrived quietly, then devastatingly. In her final years, Welch began suffering memory loss that family members later understood as Alzheimer's. The woman once photographed in perfect control of every pose now struggled to recall events, lines, faces. She withdrew from public life, accepting fewer roles after How to Be a Latin Lover, 2017, her decline accelerating as the disease progressed. Welch died on February 15, 2023, at age 82 from cardiac arrest while living with Alzheimer's in Los Angeles. Her ashes remained with her family, a private farewell to a woman the public never truly knew. Her estimated net worth of $40 million came from decades of acting, legal victories, and a fashion and beauty empire that outlived the image Hollywood forced upon her. Roy Kinnear as Planchet. Roy Kinnear was born on January 8, 1934, in Wigan, Lancashire. At 39 years old, Kinnear played Planchet, the anxious, loyal servant whose clumsiness masks genuine courage, in The Three Musketeers, 1973. His timing, warmth, and ability to steal a scene made him one of Britain's most beloved character actors. Yet the laughter he created often hid how fragile his world could be. His marriage to actress Carmel Cryan became the center of his life, especially as their eldest daughter Karina required lifelong care due to severe disabilities. While filming roles like Mr. Salt in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, 1971, and returning as Planchet for sequels, Kinnear juggled work with the constant worry of providing for a family that depended entirely on him. The pressure grew heavier as he took riskier jobs by heavy roles. The breaking point came in 1988 on the set of The Return of the Musketeers. A horseback scene went wrong, sending him crashing to the ground and shattering his pelvis. Internal bleeding spread too fast for doctors to stop it, and the film that reunited the cast of his most famous role became the setting of his final hours. His death devastated his family and ignited a legal battle that exposed unsafe production conditions pushed by scheduling demands. Kinnear died on September 20, 1988, at age 54 in a Madrid hospital. He was buried at East Sheen Cemetery in London, later joined by his daughter Karina, who died in 2020. His estimated net worth of $5 million reflected decades of film, television, and voice work, crafted with heart, humor, and a gentleness the industry still mourns. Jean-Pierre Cassel as King Louis XIII. Jean-Pierre Cassel was born on October 27, 1932, in Paris, France. At 41 years old, Cassel played King Louis XIII, the elegant, insecure monarch quietly overshadowed by his own court, in The Three Musketeers, 1973. His grace as a dancer blended into the role, giving the king a strangely fragile dignity. Yet off-camera, he was fighting battles timing and talent could not cure. His marriage to Sabine Letique carried him through his rise in the 1960s, but the pressure of balancing comedy and serious drama strained their home life. While performing in Army of Shadows, 1969, the emotional weight of the resistance drama seeped into their marriage, widening the distance between them. Their divorce arrived quietly in 1980, the same year Cassel's professional commitments reached a peak that left little room for repair. His second marriage to Anne Cellerier brought steadiness, yet even that partnership was soon overshadowed by a disease he refused to acknowledge publicly. Cancer arrived in his final years like an uninvited director, deciding which scenes he could still perform. Though already weakened, he returned to the stage in 2006 for Gainsbourg's Suite, a tribute to an old friend. One last attempt to prove that illness had not silenced him. His performances in La Cérémonie, 1995, and The Diving Bell and the Butterfly, 2007, showed an actor determined to keep working even as the physical cost grew heavier each month. Cassel died on April 19, 2007, at age 74 from cancer. His death closed a career of more than 200 screen roles that shaped French cinema for half a century. His estimated net worth of $10 million came from film, stage, and a lifetime of relentless artistic discipline that outlasted almost every obstacle except time. Simon Ward as Duke of Buckingham. Simon Ward was born on October 16, 1941, in Beckenham, Kent, England. At 32 years old, Ward played the Duke of Buckingham, the romantic, impulsive courtier whose loyalty burns brighter than his caution in The Three Musketeers, 1973. His youthful elegance made him one of Britain's most promising leading men, but his life would soon take a darker, unexpected turn. His marriage to Alexandra Malcolm began with the optimism of two young actors building a future together. The success of Young Winston, 1972, which earned him a BAFTA nomination, brought sudden fame, but also long hours, constant travel, and a pace that pulled him away from home. Alexandra held the family together through the frenzy of the 1970s. Three daughters, including actress Sophie Ward, became the emotional anchor in a life increasingly shaped by uncertainty. A brutal street attack in 1987 changed everything. The head injury fractured his skull and forced emergency brain surgery, leaving him with chronic polycythemia. Though he continued acting in Judge John Deed and The Tudors, every performance after the injury carried the weight of pain he rarely spoke about. When cancer appeared in his final years, it struck a body already scarred by decades of struggle. Ward died on July 20, 2012, at age 70, and was buried in Highgate Cemetery in London. His estimated net worth of $5 million came from stage and screen roles that defined a brief but brilliant era of British acting, an era cut short not by talent, but by tragedy. In the end, their stories remind us how brilliance on screen can hide a lifetime of battles behind it. But which actor's journey shocked you the most? And whose legacy do you feel deserves to be remembered more deeply? Tell us in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more untold Hollywood stories.